welcome to today's High Impact Dialogue for Development session. My name is Jerry Blenman, Executive Director of the Caribbean Center for Organizational Excellence. It is an honor to be the host and moderator for today's conversation on go-to-market secrets for unlocking next-level business growth. I am equally honored and thrilled to welcome our featured guest, Jeff Ballard, a go-to-market and partner strategy expert with a track record of helping high-growth B2B tech companies scale with precision and power. Jeff brings a wealth of rich and deep experience from global leaders like IBM, Seagate, and Symantec to today's conversation. As well, he has supported dozens of emerging tech companies in turning GTM strategy into real-world results. He is the creator of GTM Accelerator, an 8-week intensive program designed to help founders, business startups, and GTM leaders build customer-centric strategies that generate a healthy pipeline, close more deals, and drive measurable growth. Jeff is known for his practical frameworks, his ability to bring alignment across teams, and his passion for helping businesses win in today's crowded, fast-moving market. He doesn't just talk strategy, he actually builds it, he lives it, and coaches teams on how to effectively execute it. It's our delight to welcome you, Jeff, to today's session. Are you ready to take us through this all-important forum this morning?
Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry. And I'm excited to be here, and I'm glad you invited me onto this forum. And it's funny, I remember thinking, am I going to go to this global economic forum here in Indianapolis that happened here in Indianapolis this year? Am I going to go to it or not? I finally decided, yes, I'm going to go. A wealth of information, but obviously one of the best things that came out of that was meeting you and your wife, Cardell, and being able to spend some time. Jackie, sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. With being able to spend some time with you guys and talking about what you're doing, and it's an amazing program that you have built.
Thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. And it certainly was an honor to meet you at the Global Entrepreneurial Summit. Quite an event. So, Jeff, I am certain that one of the first questions our audience would want for you to address is, what is go-to-market? What is a go-to-market strategy? And in your experience, what defines a truly successful go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot because there are a lot of misconceptions around what go-to-market is. And so I always like to start with what it is not. And what it is not is a lot of people think it's a marketing plan, or some people think that it's a sales play. It is really all about the process of getting your offering, whether it's a product or services or combination thereof, to where your customers are successfully engaging with it and using it happily. And it's that whole process from end to end. In terms of what makes it most successful, or companies most successful in that journey, is really a focus around the customer. That customer centricity is very important. And a lot of people will talk about it, but being truly customer centric delivers a lot of value. Some of the recent studies that I've seen, one from Deloitte, 88% of the companies, they did a survey, and 88% of the companies that they surveyed said customer experience is their competitive advantage. And other surveys have found where customer-centric companies are 60% more profitable. But the number that really jumps out at me is those companies who are treating customer service and are focused on customers see 3.5 times more growth than other organizations.
Wow.
And so for me, that success comes down to putting customers first.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I know in your work you have highlighted four pillars of high impact GTM, what you call a high impact GTM plan. Can you walk us through them and on why they actually matter in business?
Absolutely. Yeah, I tend to break down go-to-market into four core pillars, and then I also have four tenets that go along with it. Those pillars, it starts first and foremost, that first pillar, obviously, you might have thought because of what I just said, customer. It's not just about knowing who your customers are. It's really getting down to understand them and what are their pains, wants, needs, and aspirations, and really getting into what is their appetite for buying, what's their appetite for change. And so then the next pillar becomes your products. Once you understand that, then you have the product pillar. And there it's about understanding how your offering helps address the customer's pains, wants, needs, and aspirations. The third pillar is marketing. And this comes down to two things, message and channel. So the marketing pillar, it's about communicating how your offering, your product or services addresses those pains, wants, and needs and aspirations for the customer, and doing so in industry type of terms or in the customer's terms. An example I use all the time, it's very easy for all of us to understand, is if you're used to talking to, let's say, financial services, and you go and now you're talking with a healthcare organization, talking about their customers is not the right way to go. They're patients. So it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
simple terminology, understanding that terminology, you're putting it in their language. And that is obviously a very simple version, but you can understand as you go into the industries, there's a lot of terminology there, and make sure you're using the right terminology. The second thing is about the channel, where you're communicating that message. Where is it that your customer gets that information, and making sure you're communicating in those channels. The last pillar, then, pillar number four, is sales. And this is where I always throw some people in the audience when I talk, especially if they're salespeople or especially if they're driving a sales organization. I say, in sales, your job is not to close deals. Your
Wow,
job is to help customers make a decision. That's what you're there for. And if
wow.
you take that twist of perspective, you're going to be an ally to your prospect and eventually to your customer, that they're going to be you'll be a trusted advisor for them, which is a great spot to be in. So being able to be there to help customers make that buying decision is what's very important.
Wow, wow, wow. And I couldn't help but take note that for each of the pillars, the reference always went back to the customer. It's always going back to the customer. And this very often is a bit different, in the context of a lot of what businesses actually focus on. Very often, businesses are focusing on how they can showcase who they are, how they can highlight, the value of their work and such like. But this strategy says keep your focus on the customer. Can you say a little bit more, with regards to the importance of that aspect of it, primarily for businesses, especially startups for that matter?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just startups, it can be founders and varying ranges, and then companies in general are very proud of the services or the product that they offer, the accomplishments that they've made, the ability, where points where they beat out their competitors. So they're quick to talk about that, and they're comfortable talking about that all day long. But if a vendor is only talking about themselves, how does that form the relationship? It doesn't. All they're doing is making now the customer is being forced to now understand, okay, if you do this and this, then to me that means, or oh, that means so I can go about and do this. Whereas opposed to you work with the customer, understand again, pains, wants, needs, aspirations. What are they trying to do? what outcome are they looking to achieve? That's really where the difference is made. And in my sessions, I talk a lot about outcomes because companies don't, or yeah, companies and people, we don't buy products, we buy outcomes.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
we need
Wow.
to understand what the customer is looking to have as an outcome and help to sell to that.
Yeah, you don't you're looking for the outcome. I really like that. That's such a signature statement. Now, what just occurred to me as you were speaking is that not every entity that's being established focuses on delivering a product. Others focus on delivering a service, and then there are a lot of public sector entities that sometimes we seem to think they don't really care too much about the customer and go to market and such like. Take, for example, maybe a post office or a police station where the focus is different. Would a go-to-market strategy actually apply for those type of entities?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the pillars, the way that I have them broken down is at a basic level and really there for any business. I get asked all the time, well, is it for this type of business or that type of business? And I say the go-to-market model really is across all businesses. That is a methodology basically for anybody who has a product or service that they're looking to engage with a customer, it is for them. Now,
Yeah.
use an example of a public office, and my first thing that jumped into my head is two Department of Motor Vehicle experiences. One when I was living in California, where if I didn't have an appointment because I had to replace my driver's license or whatever the case was, I knew I had to go there early, like at 7 in the morning before they opened, so that I could get in line to wait and hopefully I would get in. And I remember one time literally sitting there all day and I didn't get my appointment until almost 4 o'clock.
Wow.
And so that's one experience. Now I moved to Indiana and it's time for me to get my new driver's license. And I said, okay, I know the experience. I'm going to go there. There was no line. And literally, as I pulled my number, because you pull a number and they call your number, as I pulled the number, they were calling it. And I'm just sitting there going, wait, is this really a experience? And so if you take those two, now obviously the DMV, you have no alternative. You have to go there, you have to get a license. But the experience for me as a customer, I was ecstatic. I loved it. And so when I'm talking with their people at the office, I'm happy. And I said, wow, you're doing a great job. And it was such a positive vibe. Whereas if you went to the California DMV, there is nothing positive about it. So it's really about the experience. So even if you're not in a competitive situation, how do you want to engage with the public? And that's really the model for this.
The outcome actually matters. It really matters. So, at what stage should a company seriously invest in developing a GTM strategy? And are there signals that suggest, look, this is the right time or this is not the right time for developing a go-to-market strategy?
Well, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Field of Dreams, a very good baseball movie with Kevin Costner in it. And there was a line in there that was very famous. If you build it, they will come. And it was relevant to the topic there. And it's a great line for a movie, a horrible go-to-market strategy. So I would say from the very beginning, you need to understand how are we going to get this into the hands of our customer and that they're happy to be using it. So it's not just getting them to buy, but making sure their experience with your product or service is a positive thing and they're excited and happy about it. So you need to have that go to market in place as you start.
Yeah,
And as your business matures, you're going to need to up level because
yeah,
what gets you from 0 to 1 million is going to be, it's not going to be the same thing that's going to help take you from 1 million to 10 million or 10 million,
yeah.
20 million.
Wow.
So each
Yeah,
stage you have to recalibrate, readjust. And I do some work with an organization called GTM Partners, and I'll talk a lot about them. They talk about three stages of go-to-market maturity. And it's that first stage is where those early companies are, and that's about problem market fit. So you're looking to identify and solve a significant problem in the market for the customer. Then as you evolve and you get more established, now you're in what they call product market fit. Now you're able to sell the same solution because in that first phase, you're doing a lot of custom work, doing adjustments. You're trying to figure out who you're selling to, what works, what doesn't. Now, as you move into product fit, it's more stable. You have
Yeah,
a solid product, you're not making a lot of changes to. You can sell that to the same types of buyers over and over and over again without having to make many changes. And that there's a strong retention. So
yeah,
people stay with the product and stay with you. And then
yeah,
that third phase is where everybody really want to get to, and that's the platform market fit. And that's about being able to now expand within your customers and have offering out multiple products. You get more revenue from existing customers, and you may have a number of go-to-market motions. But those are the three stages. So as a company moves through there are adjustments that need to be made because, as I said before, what you do in one stage is not going to work in the next stage.
yeah. And that leads us to give, even more consideration to this whole thing of scaling and growth challenges within the context of a business and its relationship to how it interacts with the market. And my question in that regard is, what would you consider to be the most common bottlenecks that actually prevent companies from breaking through their current growth stage? And what do most companies tend to get wrong when they are actually, preparing to go to the market? Is it that they're going to market with the wrong phase, so to speak, based on the comments you made just a few moments ago?
Absolutely. That would be the number one thing that causes issues is not understanding where you are in the market. If you're following advice from a larger company and maybe doing sales motion that's more fitting somebody that's in a product or platform market fit stage, but you're not quite there, it's going to be a disconnect. Or conversely, what I most often see is companies, they find success, they're working with a number of customers, but they're still making tweaks and changes here and there. They're still mostly dealing off of driving leads or getting leads from working networks and some other things. And they think they had good success, but suddenly they start to see it start to stall out a little bit. And so now they think, oh, we just need to do more of what we do. And that's not the case. So misunderstanding where you are in the stage and the types of activities that you need to do, that's really one of the biggest thing. Because as I said before, the thing that got you to where you are now is not going to necessarily get you to where it is you want to go to get you to that next level.
Yeah,
I referenced the book or my partners, GTM partners. They have a book that it's called Move, Sangram Varjay, and I'll actually put that into the chat here. It's a very good book, and I highly recommend it. They talk about the five so-called valleys of death for go-to-market, where you're in the market, and you can create a product but you're not able to market. That's one challenge. You're able to market it, but it's not selling. Or you're selling, but you're not able to deliver against what the customer's expectations are. The fourth one is you can deliver, but for one reason or another, customers aren't signing up. They're not having the experience they expect, and they're not renewing with you.
yeah,
And then the last one, you can renew, but you're not able to expand.
yeah.
So those are some of the what they call the five valleys of death. And as I said, I put the book Move, the 4-question go-to-market strategy. I put that title in the chat for people.
Thanks so very much for that. And this morning, folks, we are chatting with Jeff Ballard, go-to-market strategist, and a wealth of knowledge and experience in this regard. Now, Jeff, we are in a very dynamic, market space, a dynamic environment where you plan today and you wake up the next morning and things have changed. How on earth do you manage the market and go to a market that is changing so rapidly? How do you cope with that? Because I happen to know that that's a major concern for so many people in the business market. The changing appetite, the changing regulation, so much is changing and it's changing rapidly. How do you effectively go to market when the market is changing so rapidly on you?
Yeah, I get that a lot, and especially with the market today. I refer to today's market as an unnerved market, that people don't know what's going to be happening from one week to the next, and you can see it in some of the stock markets around the world. Um, for me, it's all about having that plan, having a framework of a strategy,
Ah,
a framework
yeah,
that is strong enough and rigid enough that it will keep you moving forward towards your goals and objectives, regardless of market conditions, but allow flexibility. So as you look at market conditions, there may be new opportunities that open up. Something happened that you didn't expect, that you now need to either avoid or try and take advantage of. That's probably the best way that I think to manage that. For me, I always liken it to, and I liken go to market in general to navigation. So if I'm sailing from Charleston, South Carolina down to Bridgetown, I'm going to know where it is I want to go, and I'm going to chart out my course, and I'm going to set out on that course. But weather can change, conditions can change. I'm going to be in varying types of environments, whether it's shallow water, deep water, hard current, whatever, no winds. There's a number of things that can happen. But I have my course in place. I have the tools and resources I can monitor to track what are the changing conditions, and I can course correct as needed. And so
yeah.
that's the analogy I tend to use, especially around a go-to-market, that you have that plan in place, you have the resources that you're tracking and monitoring what's going on, and you're always doing those course corrections, minor course corrections, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, as you painted that picture, the question of whether or not there's a shared GTM vision. Is there such a thing as a shared GTM vision? Because if the market is changing and the weather patterns are varying and people are in different, states of mind when the change is occurring, the likelihood is that you're going to have some fragmentation in the organization. And the question is there such a thing as a shared go-to-market vision that everyone pretty much is able to envisage and work with in spite of the changes that are occurring in the market?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, can you imagine being on that boat out on the ocean, and it's a 12-person crew, let's say, and there are, 12 different ideas on how to get where you're going? That boat's not going to go very far. It's a long time to get there. So in business, fortunately, it's not life or death. In that situation, that would be bad. But in business, alignment is vital to a go-to-market strategy or any strategy. You have to have that alignment with your team. And it's not easy to get, and it gets harder as you get larger. For me personally, that's why I like to work with the small and medium types of companies, because I've worked with the big and worked within the big organizations, as you mentioned, IBM, Symantec, Seagate. Those are very big organizations that there's a lot of people with a lot of different ideas, but and tend to have silos, and it's a challenge. But for those small and medium organizations, getting that alignment is vital. And in fact, there's an acronym that we use called CAT, and it stands for C is for clarity. It's having that vision and strategy, funding priorities, sequencing, revenue goals, all of that. You have clarity around what it is you're trying to do, your strategy.
Yeah.
And then the A is alignment. And that's where it's most important to understand um, where everybody is and to get everybody onto the same page that we all believe and see this is where we can grow the most. This is the product or product set that's going to drive the most revenue. This is the way that we're going to engage with customers, and so on and so on. And then the last T in that is the team and making sure that it's well defined roles, responsibilities, incentives, that those are all wrapped around that strategy. But everything starts with strategy, getting a team aligned around that, and then making sure that you have everything that you're tracking along.
I love that. I totally love that. And what it signals really is the very important value of structure and ensuring that there are systems in place. And we are so big at the Caribbean Center for Organizational Excellence at promoting and advocating for good, sound structures that allow for an organization, in spite of the issues that may arise, to be able to continue. I see we have a question coming in from Jacqueline, which I think is quite poignant. Where, in your opinion, can resources be wasted in the go-to-market strategy?
Ooh, there's numerous places that can be wasted. Anything that is outside of the strategy. And, numerous times I can tell you, I've sat in boardrooms or conference rooms, and I'm hearing what the strategy is, and this is how we're moving forward. And then you leave that room, and now you're doing your work and you're hearing people, and you may hear somebody, excuse me, that says, yeah, I don't really believe in that. We need to go this way. We need to do this thing. So now that person and their resources are being directed away from where your strategy is. So not having that alignment can really cause the waste of your precious resources, whether it's dollars or people or time. It's very easy for those to get wasted when they're not in alignment. If you don't have the proper ideal customer profile, you don't know who your customer is and really understand where they're getting your information. Here's a classic example. Years ago, I had a CEO who said, we need to be advertising in this magazine. This magazine, it's the best magazine out there. It's the one that I read. And he kept going on and on. I finally had to say, excuse me, but our customers don't read that magazine. Our customers read these magazines because they're aimed at them. And so, falling prey to your own prejudices and preferences can also be a way of wasting resources, whether it's advertising dollars in the example that I set or people resources in the previous example.
Yeah, and I guess that also really is such an important definition between a company that is profitable and one that is optimizing its opportunity for profitability. You may be profitable, but have you optimized the opportunity for profitability by managing the waste, in going to market? And that also, to my mind, is vital for determining the price of the product or service when you go to market. If you're spending more than you actually need to spend, then it is to the disadvantage of the customer, who you centralized earlier in our conversation to be the important person in the context of the business. So if I'm spending more, it means that I am putting my customer at a disadvantage because I have to charge a higher price. And that certainly doesn't help the business. So the whole context of waste, and I mean, we use this a lot in lean Six Sigma management, where I am a really great proponent and we promote it. Managing waste is of absolute importance. Tell us a little as well too about the whole idea of continuous improvement as part of the go-to-market strategy. So we are managing waste, but what about the whole context and concept of ongoing improvements to ensure that your go-to-market is as effective and efficient as it possibly can be?
For me, it comes down to a couple of things. One is the discipline of executing against your developing and executing your strategy.
Yeah.
It's having that discipline, that focus, and the fortitude to execute along those lines. Then comes the reporting and communication. I talked earlier about having the instruments to measure your success and how you're progressing. That's well and good, but it also needs to be communicated, because the more you can communicate that type of information, the more opportunities that will actually arise for ways to improve. I remember one company I was working with. It was again a few years ago. They had a packaged product, and they would track how much revenue they were driving in a particular quarter, and they would track it over time. And you would think salespeople, marketing people, that's where the focus is really going to be. But I tell you, the people that were tracking how many units were going out the door was the warehouse. And they were looking and saying, if we can just put out 5 to 10% more, if we can do that, then can we sell more? So they got involved, and they were actually able to help keep the revenue growth that the company was looking to attain, to keep that revenue growth going, because they felt they could join in on this. So for me, it's that reporting and communicating to your entire team that everybody understands what goals and objectives we're trying to get to, and then being able to look for those incremental places that they can make an improvement. Uh,
Yeah.
One statistic that I saw is a 2% increase in customer satisfaction is equivalent to a 10% to the bottom line. So you can
Wow.
actually increase revenue by 10% just with a 2% increase in customer satisfaction. So always looking for those little places of where you can make those improvements that are going to have a big impact. Those are ways that I tend to look at with the
I,
go.
I, I, I I so like that, Jeff. A 2% increase in customer satisfaction is, what is it? A 10% improvement
10%.
on a 10% improvement on the bottom line. That's amazing. And again, it's pointing to the value of customer retention. It's pointing to the value of customer, the voice of the customer being loud in the marketplace for
Yeah.
you. And if I can get a customer to validate my product, to help build credibility of my organization, the likelihood is that I am going to be a lot more profitable. I really like that I really like that. I'm big on numbers. I'm a finance guy, so when- whenever I hear statistics, kind of, creates a little spark in me that a 2% increase in customer satisfaction can go to the bottom line and hit it with a 10% increase in profitability. That's amazing. That's
Yep.
absolutely amazing. To my mind, that's a great takeaway for, all of us on this call today. A 2% increase in customer satisfaction, pointing it to the customer every time. Now, I am intrigued. I'm very intrigued by what you've been doing in terms of the GTM Accelerator. And I'd like for you to tell us about GTM Accelerator and what makes it different and what kind of transformation you've been seeing with persons who have been interacting with the GTM Accelerator.
Yeah, so that's my program. That's the product that I offer out. And it's a go-to-market intensive that helps companies develop a high impact go-to-market strategy that they can execute on their own, and we help them do that within 8 weeks. So we can go from having no plan, or maybe you have some ideas, or maybe you have a plan in place, but you want to take it to the next level. We can help you with that within an 8 week time period. And as part of the program, we make sure to provide that knowledge transfer such that you are able to execute it on your own. Or if you decide to work with contractors or agencies, then you have a much better foundation to start with and can help drive better outcomes for your own business. I've been running this for a long time, about 10 years or so. I started it when I was with IBM and built out a program that helped small companies build a go-to-market strategy. And we would bring in people from each of those four pillars that I talked about. We would have our customer folks. And for there, we talked our Institute of Business Value, a very good research arm. If you don't know or aren't aware, you can look up IBM Institute of Business Value, a lot of great information. I would bring in those folks to talk about market trends. I would then bring in our product people to talk about how our product is working to satisfy those trends and what customers are trying to do. And then we would talk marketing, and we would talk then how to sell. And so it was all built around helping them develop that go-to-market strategy. But it really wasn't just about that 2 day workshop. It was about a continued motion. And so as I built this program out, as I took it out on my own and built it out, I built in that motion. So now each week after the workshop, 1 week we're talking customers, the next week we're talking product, the next week we're talking marketing, and so on and so on. And that's why it takes that 8 weeks, because we want to make sure that one, you're working the plan, two, you're working with your team back at the office, or there at the office, and making sure that you have alignment with your team. And then at the end of this 8 week program, you have a high impact go-to-market strategy that you can execute.
Yeah, excellent. And with regards to the actual GTM accelerator, can you share with us maybe one experience of maybe a startup or a founder who went through the GTM accelerator and actually saw some tangible results?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a program that I can give you a mass. You like numbers. The companies as I built out this program, we did the analysis and there were a number of companies, whether they were building products or whether they were offering services. They came from a variety of backgrounds. Some were AI, into looking at AI, others were managed service providers, etc. Whole spectrum.
Right.
As we worked with them to put people through this, and I was running, I would say about 7 to 8 workshops in a 12-week period, and I was doing that 2 to 3 times a year. So there were a number of companies that we ran through, and it would be anywhere from 15 at the low to 50 at the high. So a number of people participating in each of these sessions. So a lot of people have gone through the program. And the numbers that we were able to get, the analysis we did, showed that partners going through this type of program were growing 50% faster than those who didn't.
Wow.
That
Wow.
was phenomenal. My managers loved it, so that was good. But what really made it the difference for me is seeing the value partners got out of it. We would do surveys after the workshops and ask, how was the value of the content, and how soon do you think you'll implement? And I had to check the numbers multiple times, because what came back was 84% saying they were going to implement skills they learned in the workshop immediately.
Right.
And I'm going, that can't be right. And then another 13% said it was going to be within the next 3 to 6 months. So that's 97% of the people going through the program saw the value that they were going to implement the skills within the next 6 months.
Yeah.
And so to me, that was phenomenal. Partners saw the value, and they saw ways they can improve their business. And then we as a company, we saw them actually improving their business, at least along the lines of our portfolio. They were growing, 50% faster than their counterparts.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. What would you say coming out of all of the work you've seen and done so far are two quick wins that maybe an existing company can lay hold on for driving opportunities in the market? Just maybe two. I mean, if there were two things that I should focus on, I've not done the program. I've not, been a part of the GTM Accelerator. But what are two things that I should have front of mind for going to market?
So I get asked to speak quite often, and the two things that I tend to leave people with, very simple. One is to map out the complete buying system of your customer. All too often, people get caught up and go to market. You'll hear ICP or ideal customer profile, and they get caught up in knowing their ideal customer profile. But very often in business, that decision, buying decision, is not just a one person decision. So
Yeah,
understanding, especially in the technology sector where I've spent a lot of time, there's a business buyer, there's a technology buyer, there's a financial buyer.
yeah,
And those can be different people in different organizations led by different objectives. There can be a decision maker who is yet even another person. And then there are others that are involved, whether they're champions or influencers, or maybe sometimes they're blockers. Understanding who all within your customer's environment is leading into that decision and map those out. What are their roles? What are their aspirations? What are the things that keep them up at night? What are, what is their predilection for change? Quite often companies can be reticent to change, especially you're talking insurance or financial sector. But you can find people within those environments who want to make changes because they're looking to make a name for themselves. So map out the buyer, and you could do that in a general sense. Extra credit if you want to go do it for all of your customers or your primary customers and prospects that you're looking to land big deals with. But that's the first thing. Map the complete buying system for your customer. The second thing, and you mentioned it earlier, I loved hearing you bring that up unprompted. Voice of the customer. Make sure you have a voice of the customer program in place. Notice I said program, not initiative, not a project. It's a program. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking with a venture capitalist, and I asked him, I said, what to you is the most important thing around go to market for companies that you're looking to invest in? And he says, the most important thing for me, where I've seen the difference, is I hear an entrepreneur tell me, we're looking to bring this product, this offering to market. We went out and talked to 100 different customers. And what we learned was this. And here's how we made the changes and adapted to it. And he said, so when I hear things like that, I'm ready to listen. I'm more inclined to put my money down. And
yeah.
for him, it was not about just talking to customers or potential prospects, but talk to people that you lost the deal. They didn't buy, they bought somebody else, or
Wow.
no action. Talk to those folks. So put that in place, a voice of the customer program, use it regularly and use it to refresh that map of the customer buying system that I talked about a second ago.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you allow me, I'm going to throw in a third one.
Please go right on ahead.
So I always say, these are two things that you can do to accelerate now, whether you talk to me or not. Those are two things I encourage people to do. Map that customer buying and get a voice of the customer. The third thing, I am more than happy to get on a 30-minute call with anybody to talk about any of these go-to-market strategies or any of these things. And I've got a Calendly link. I'll share it into the chat here. I'm more than happy to spend some time with you and talk about your business and how go-to-market can help you. not a sales pitch. I'm just there to provide insight and input. And that's something that I always do. And I'm happy to share that go-to-market model and the pillars and tenets, or maybe talk about ideal customer profile segmentation or go-to-market assessment, whatever the case is.
Yes, please do drop that in the link. I'm quite certain that our audience will appreciate that. And thank you so very much for that, Jeff. And you made mention while you're putting that into the chat a moment ago that it's so important to speak as well to persons who did not take up your offer. If you lost the deal with a customer, that they are important people to speak with. I am almost thinking that they're probably the most important persons to speak with, because if you did not buy my product, if you did not take up my service, there must be a reason. And, how important is that for reshaping your go-to-market strategy? Should you reshape the go-to-market strategy after hearing from persons who did not take up an offer or didn't buy a product?
I am one for not doing ivory tower planning.
Yeah,
Meaning,
okay.
I sit at the corporate office and I don't go anywhere. I talk to people who are out in the field, out on the front lines, but I myself don't go out. I don't believe in that. So, as you engage with those people, the customers, people who didn't buy, you're out there hearing what they're asking about and their concerns. You have to pay attention. And as you're talking to those people who said, no, I chose other than you, whether that's I chose to keep the same, the status quo, or I chose your competitor. You want to understand why. And you may hear, and you have to be very careful to understand, just like you wouldn't want to run off in a direction. Somebody says, oh, I bought your product because it does this really great. Well, good. Let's now go promote that to everybody. You have to understand what's the trend. Okay, that's one data point. Now, as you talk with a number of companies, a number of people who didn't buy, are you hearing your price was too high across several of those? Are you hearing it was difficult to use across several of those? Is one person standing up and saying, I didn't like this particular feature, or I don't have use for that function? If it's just a one case point here or there, not necessary to make a change. But if you're hearing it across a pattern of people, absolutely you want to sit up and take note. And you either say, I'm going to change my product because that is the exact audience I'm looking to reach. Or you can say, that may not be the right audience for us. Let's now focus our energies and efforts into this other direction with this
Yeah.
other audience. So absolutely you want to pay attention to it, but look for trends, not single data points.
Yeah. And what would you say with respect to new markets? You've got a go-to-market strategy that is working in one market, and you are ambitious. You want to enter another market. What are some of the recommendations you would make in respect of new markets and let's say an existing go-to-market strategy that's working in the current market that you're functioning in?
Yeah, for me, and I've done this quite a bit. One of my roles was to help a company expand into various markets around the world. And I was very conscious when I went into a market that I wasn't talking about, well, this is how it works in the US, or this is how it works in this country, or this is how it works in this region, or everybody in the world does it like this. It really comes down to, because no two markets are the same, whether
Right.
you're talking geographical markets, industry markets, or any other way you want to slice it. Markets tend to be, they're different. Although if they were the same, it would be one market. But the reason that there are different markets, because there are different needs and different objectives. So understanding what those market needs, what's different about that new market is really vital. Years ago, I helped a company go into Japan. And I remember walking in, and the company had not had success there at all. And the first, I would say, half hour of my meeting was spent apologizing for the person who preceded me because he came in like the typical American. This is how we do it in the US. So this is how you're going to do it. And so once we got past the, I'm not like that. I want to hear in your market what are the needs. And so they talked about commitment to the market. We were doing that, and it was going to be these various steps, and it's going to be over a long period of time, 5 years. And I'm going, okay, if I go back and tell my boss, my CEO, that it's going to take us 5 years to get to where he wants, that's not going to be good. But if I am, heavy-handed like my predecessor, that's not going to be good. So instead, I worked with them to understand more about their culture and how their business worked, and then started to introduce ways that, well, what if we did this? Because if we do this type of activity, it can help in this way. Not here's how we did it here or here's how they did it. It's what if we did it this way, and we can see this, and we can see this growth, and eventually was able to convince them, okay, yes, they were willing to do some things that I had suggested. And we actually saw the term is hockey stick growth. And I introduced this Japanese company to that term because as you looked on the chart, you saw steady growth, and where we implemented, sudden ramp up. And it looked like a
Uh-huh.
hockey stick. And so they loved that idea. They thought it was funny. And 6 months later, in some follow up, I decided I was going to send them as a thank you and a congratulations. I was going to send them a signed hockey stick, just as a thing, right? And when I went to visit 6 months after that, even so, a year later, I went to visit. I was in their offices, and they had it up on the wall. And I said, I can't believe you put that up. And they said, we get things from a lot of companies and we don't put them up. But this we had to put up.
The
I
hockey
was so
stick
impressed.
growth.
They hung it on the wall. And I thought, even if they put it up right before I came and they take it down right after I leave, still had that idea of the hockey stick growth and the value we brought to them. So really being able to understand that market, what they're looking to do, and coming at it with all the knowledge you've gained from the other markets that you've been in, all the business knowledge you have. So you're not starting from scratch, but you're starting from a place of a clean slate. Okay, let's look at it with the new perspective, the perspective of this market.
Yeah, that's so good. That's really so good, Jeff. And it points right back to the customer again. One of the things we emphasize the Caribbean Center for Organizational Excellence is doing a diagnostic assessment before we actually enter into any engagement. We are of the view that if we can best understand the gaps, that we can be very precise and focus on what actually matters in any particular intervention. We also are of the view that if the gaps are not significant, that focus can be placed in other directions. Said in other words, it's so important to diagnose the patient before you start operating on them, because the likelihood is that you can kill the patient if you are operating in the incorrect areas, or you can prescribe something that can totally, destroy or hurt the patient. So that initial diagnostic assessment is of absolute importance. And I like the hockey stick growth. Can I take that one and use it a little?
Yes, you can.
Growth.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely amazing. And you made mention a moment ago. My brain ticks over when we are having these conversations, and I like that they are open and allow for space. That you went back to if you go back to your CEO, how um how how disruptive have leaders been to driving effective go-to-market strategies? Because we know that leaders have their own perspective and their own views on how things should happen and when they should happen and where they should happen and such like. Have you found for the larger organizations that there has been some bottlenecks because of leadership with, effective go-to-market strategies?
Oh, 100%. Especially as you get into those larger organizations. I talked about that. Um, I often talk about how working with a company like an IBM or Symantec, people tend to think, oh, you have all the resources in the world. No, the value for those large organizations are the processes that they have in place. And I'll say some of the processes. They can have way too many. They can be over processed sometimes, and over resourced, and bloat comes in. And that can be a large chunk of the problem when you're dealing with trying to be agile and trying to move quickly. So that's one of the big areas that I would say that there's a challenge with being able to move quickly in when you need to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, time has slipped by so quickly, and I need to get in at least two key questions of what I consider to be important. When we talk about GTM, is there a relationship between GTM and metrics? And if there is, what are some of the metrics that entities should be paying attention to? Maybe three, four of them. I know you have so graciously shared the link that persons can ask some more of these questions. But certainly for our audience, what are some of the leading metrics as it relates to GTM strategy that attention should be paid to?
Quite often, everybody's focused on things like pipeline. What are my number of opportunities out there, and what's our close rate for that? They look at how many deals are we winning, and what kind of revenue are we generating, and what's our close rate. Those are all important metrics, absolutely. But there are additional ones to take a look at. One is customer acquisition cost, understanding how much it takes to actually acquire a customer. And as you look at that, then what becomes very important is the benefit of keeping that customer, how much
Yeah,
benefit customer retention has, because it is so much more cost effective to keep new customers than it is to go out and acquire new customers. And that customer churn, as you and I talked about earlier, that just that 2% improvement can really provide a dramatic impact to that bottom line. So a lot of times in the software or in the subscription or service-based business, they will talk about ARR, annual revenue recognition, which means how much revenue are we getting from a particular time period within that year. But the number to look at is the net retention revenue. How much at the beginning of a time period does your revenue, you're at revenue X. At the end of that time period, if it's a quarter, then that's a quarter. Where are you at? Are you at less than X, or are you greater than X? And that's going to tell you if your business is growing. I've
yeah,
talked with entrepreneurs who are excited because, oh, we have 90% net retention revenue. Well, no, that's nothing to be excited about, because that means you're losing 10% of your business.
wow, wow.
You're having to now go out and get more customers to address that 10% loss of revenue. So successful companies we've seen are up in the 120, 130 kind of range for net RRR, net retention revenue. So those are just some of the metrics to take a look at. And I realized, Jerry, that I've been putting my notes to the panelists and to you and I, but now, so I'm putting them in the chat. Here's a book, the Move book that I talked about, and they mentioned some of the other metrics as
Yes.
well to be able to take a look at.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so very much. I mean, these are all very important resources, and certainly on the share of this conversation, we'll make sure that these resources are also attached to this when we share it to the wider audience. We are approaching the final hour, and I want to ask you the all-important question: what excites you most about the future of go-to-market strategy, Jeff?
Um, well, honestly, and it's coincidentally, because my error earlier, it kind of hinges around that book that I just put into the chat. Years ago, I'm old enough to know when Jeffrey Moore brought his book out, Crossing the Chasm, it really helped define how you launch products in the marketplace. It gave a terminology and it gave models and it gave common conversation. It created common conversations. And you'll hear today about crossing the chasm type of references. Fast forward a few years later, Carrie Bodine and Harley Manning wrote a book around customer engagement. The book was called Outside In, The Power of Putting Customers at the Center of Your Business. For me, it was a very good book, but what it did was, again, brought about a model and helped give a conversation and terminology to talk about putting customers at the center of your business. So this book, Move, by Sangram Varjay and Brian and Brian um, Brian Brown, there we go. It really has helped establish a discipline around go-to-market and provides not just the models, but again, that terminology. So we can talk, what is the ideal customer profile? We can talk about the different pillars. And in their book, they actually have more pillars. They go into much more detail.
Yeah.
So for me, it's about building on that go-to-market model to incorporate ecosystems into this. So that's my next big thing. How are companies looking to expand their influence either through distribution channels or product alliances? So that's one of the things that excites me is how can this go-to-market model be adapted or enhanced with having those partnerships there? And then,
Yeah.
of course, what would a webinar or conversation be without mentioning the letters AI? So, having being able to apply AI on top of that, to me, AI is the kind of the great equalizer, much like the internet was years ago. It was supposed to be the big equalizer for businesses. AI is really amping that up and becoming an equalizer as well. So I'm kind of excited about all three of those things coming together.
Wow. And if we are ineffective with our go-to-market, then the revenue is not going to be forthcoming. We have heard that go-to-market is not just a launch checklist or a sales plan. That's what Jeff has shared with us this morning. It's the foundation for how your business reaches the right customers, how it delivers value, how it scales with purpose, for that matter. And if you are ready to move beyond guesswork and fragmented execution, I almost seem to have heard that this is the time that this is not a delayed process. This is a time to commit to clarity, alignment, and action with how you go to market, how I go to market. As we leave this discussion, I therefore challenge you to take what you've learned today and translate it into momentum. Revisit your strategy. If you've got a team, rally your teams. Pressure test your assumptions, and more importantly, put at least one insight into action in the next 30 days from what we have learned. I've learned over time that success in today's market isn't about more. It's really about doing what matters with focus and precision. The GTM Accelerator program is an excellent platform, and we are so grateful to Jeff for the opportunity to have had this conversation and the resources that he has shared. And I encourage you to take advantage of that 30-minute consultation with Jeff to look at what you're doing in your own operation and whether or not it can be upgraded. A huge thank you to you, Jeff, for generously sharing your expertise. and to each of you, our audience, for showing up as leaders, as professionals, as individuals ready to grow and ready to go to another level. Thank you so very much, Jeff. Any final comments from you?
I have one final comment, and that is around my go-to-market accelerator program, the GTM Accelerator. I put the link in the chat, so that's where you can learn more about that program. It's an 8-week program. We do it virtually. So, and for people in your audience, Jerry, we do have a special discount. So make sure to email me. I'll provide you with that discount. I should have had it here for the chat, but I will provide that afterwards, and I'll send that to you so you can put it into the recording.
Yes, please.
Certainly feel free to reach out to me, and there's a substantial discount that we have for the CCOE and its friends and affiliates.
Thank you so very much, Jeff. And thank you once again, our dear audience, for being with us this morning. We trust that this has been helpful. And I am 120% of the view that where this is applied, these important principles are applied, that they definitely would make a difference. And so we say to you to go forward with intention, execute with confidence, and let's scale for what is possible. Thank you, and see you on the next stage of growth. Thank you so very much. Have yourselves a fabulous rest of the week. This is Jerry Blenman from the Caribbean Center for Organizational Excellence. Thank you so very much.